Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Helen had been in the kitchen for an hour, waiting for her husband to come home from work. Everything on the table was as James liked it: soup, vegetable salad, tuna sandwich, and berry morsel. The woman tasted everything for the 100th time. Everything seemed fine, not too salty, and very tasty. She ran to get dressed up, put on a light-fitting blouse and skirt, corrected her hair, and put a light gloss on her lips. The woman was really pretty. Young, fresh, with a blush on her cheeks and beautiful brown hair. And God had not hurt her figure either, she had it all. Helen glanced at her watch. Oddly enough, it was already 6 o'clock. James should have been back long ago. But his phone was out of range. Busy, apparently, the woman comforted herself, though in her heart she knew it was not so. They had only been married for 3 years, and already their family was bursting at the seams. No matter how hard Helen tried, no matter how much she pleased her husband, he became more and more distant and cold. Where had the former passion, words of love, and trust gone? And lately even intimacy had disappeared. The family bed went cold. Her husband always had an excuse. He was tired. There were problems at work. Not today, and so on. Helen knew with her feminine intuition that her husband had found someone. It was so bitter and disgusting that she did not want to believe it, and she entertained her own illusions. An hour later, Helen heard the lock on the door turn and knew at once. James was drunk again. And that usually didn't bode well. He was unbearable in that state, and he nagged at everything. The man threw his expensive leather briefcase in the hallway and his jacket right on the floor, not even bothering to hang it on the hangers, and strolled imposingly into the kitchen. He looked around the whole still life with misty eyes, and then, with a sniffle, it began. "Helen, come here. What kind of rustic glamour is this? When are you going to learn how to set the table properly? I've explained it to you 100 times, all to no avail." The woman squirmed inwardly, looked guiltily at her husband, and began to make excuses. "Well, don't be angry, honey, I tried so hard. Try the soup, I'll heat it up. Would you like some cold morsels? It's your favorite. How are you doing at work? You're a little late today, aren't you?" James grimaced. "I'm not hungry, I ate in a restaurant. I was at a business negotiation. So put your masterpieces away, and don't look at me like that. Yes, I've been drinking, I'm entitled. Who's the boss of the house? Or is there something you don't like? You're already living on top of everything. I'm taking a shower and going to bed. I'm tired, you go to your room. And don't flicker around. I'm sick of you loitering in front of my eyes." Helen burst into tears and ran to her room. She was terribly hurt. Didn't even try, didn't notice that she had changed her hair, was treating her like a servant. Why? What had she done to deserve such treatment? The woman covered her eyes in the darkness and kept thinking about her miserable life. Helen grew up in a very poor family. Her mother was a hospital cleaner, and she never knew her father. She tried, as all children do, to ask her mother about him, but she only answered sarcastically, "You'll grow up and you'll understand me later." The family never had any money, barely lived from paycheck to paycheck. Helen always wore other people's clothes, which the neighbors gave to the family, and saw toys only on her birthday. At school, they also mocked the poor girl, did not take her in the company, did not want to make friends, especially since it was not an easy class, all the children of doctors and peddlers, and here is the daughter of a scavenger. Betty deliberately did not go to school assemblies. They were more like sect gatherings, a collection of money for the school. Helen was also disliked because of this, since her family was always short of money. But despite her poverty, the girl did well in school, especially in math. So after graduating from high school, Helen decided to enter the economic department, the university, but without connections and blag. She did not pass in the competition. And she and her mother had no money for the fee-paying department. They had to go to correspondence school and look for work. They wouldn't take her anywhere without experience or education, and Helen didn't want to carry a rag like her mother. Her mother's rough, red, swollen fingers with deformed joints, and a lot of other illnesses she had suffered from hard, overwork, were still in front of her eyes. And then the girl suddenly smiled on her luck. She had just applied for admission and went to be photographed in a photo salon. An elderly, intelligent-looking photographer worked there. They got to talking, and one thing led to another. Helen complained that she couldn't find work anywhere. That's when Michael offered her a job. "And you, beautiful, come to me, a trainee and a salesman. Here, hold the machine. Here I sit, and you tell me how to turn my head, and how to sit so that the photo came out beautifully. Notice where the light is coming from, and make sure I'm looking at the center, at the camera. Don't be afraid, try it." Helen took everything that was going on as a fun game and photographed the photographer herself several times. It came out great. The man held up his thumb. "Smart girl. You've got good eyesight. You know how to catch a shot. So you can do it. And I'll teach you how to process and print on the computer. I'll teach you how to develop film, and I think you'll make friends with the cash register. You seem smart. I'm not promising mountains of gold, but it's not a dusty job either. You don't have to carry sacks. Well, do you agree? If so, come back on Monday." Helen jumped up and down with happiness. "Thank you, Michael. I agree. Very interesting work. I like it. I will try my best." So, with Michael's light hand, Helen started working in a photo salon. Everyday new people, communication, in general, not boring. Of course, there were some nasty young ladies who had a problem with everything, but the girl somehow knew how to smooth out conflicts and turn them into jokes. And then one day James, a businessman who owned his own firm selling New World appliances, stopped by the salon. The man needed to have his picture taken for ID. When he saw young Helen, he even froze. "Tax, where's the photographer? I need an urgent photo, 3x4 matted photo." Helen was all flushed. "I'm a photographer. Have a seat. We'll do it in the best way, don't worry. So, head up a little bit, and to the left. Here. Very good. Attention, don't blink." The shot came out the first time, and James praised the girl. "You're not just beautiful, you're also talented. I'm actually not very photogenic, but that came out really well. My name is James, by the way. What's yours, pretty girl?" The girl was flailing at such compliments and replied, "I'm Helen, a pleasure." The man suggested, "Can I invite you in for a cup of coffee? I like you very much, Helen. You look like a delicate flower. I don't want to part with you." A joyful girl immediately agreed. James seemed to her like a prince from a fairy tale. She fell in love with him literally from the first minute. The couple began dating. The man took her to exhibitions and concerts of fashionable stars, gave her delicate roses in armfuls, and insisted on a closer relationship. However, it never got any further than passionate kissing. But here Helen showed persistence. Before her eyes stood her tired, perpetually exhausted mother, who was pulling her along all by herself. Well, no, first the wedding and then all the joys. The girl decided to herself. The couple got married, celebrated the celebration in style in an expensive restaurant. James looked at his Helen in a flying snow-white dress, and he was exhausted, counting the minutes to the first wedding night. At first, married life was beautiful and unclouded. Hot nights, fervent confessions, and an ocean of passion. But after a year, James was fed up with everything, both delicious Helen's soups and tender kisses. He wanted again that feeling of drive, of hunting, when the palpitations shake at the sight of an unapproachable young beauty. Helen wanted a child very much, but James was cautious. He thought that it was too early. He would have time. He needed to live for himself. Of course, our heroine no longer worked in a photo salon. Her husband forbade it. It was not her status. And she was also tired of the hell of life. Every day the same thing in a circle. Washing, ironing, cooking, cleaning. And the harder she did it all, trying to please her husband, the colder he became. It was like a vicious circle. They went out together less and less frequently, and there was less and less communication between them. A wall gradually grew between the spouses. It was night outside the window, and Helen perked up, almost forgetting to put James' clothes in the wash and iron his shirt for tomorrow. She decided to freshen up her jacket as well, and she checked her pockets mechanically, Her husband might have left keys or money or something there. Suddenly, she fumbled for some paper. She took it out, unwrapped it, and gasped. There was a receipt for a tour to a seaside resort for a week for two. The amount of payment was decent. Helen's heart fluttered. Did James remember that it was their wedding anniversary in 2 days and decided to surprise her? What a good fellow. How wonderful it would be, the two of us at sea for a week. She already imagined the warm water and hot sand and smiled dreamily to herself. She had to buy a new swimsuit. There wasn't much time left. So that James did not suspect anything, Helen hung up the jacket again in the closet. A surprise is a surprise. No need to spoil it. The woman's mood rose, and even traces of lipstick on her husband's dirty shirt did not embarrass her, just in case. An accident. She tiptoed into her husband's bedroom, who was snoring soundly to the loud TV. Helen turned it off, gently covered James with the plaid, and whispered, "Love you, honey. Good night, my good man." The woman got up early, made thin, lacy pancakes, brewed coffee, and woke her husband up for breakfast. Helen looked at him so lovingly, waiting for James to tell her about the trip. After all, it was already scheduled for tomorrow. The spouse ate with appetite and said mundanely, "Thank you, everything was delicious, as always." "Listen, Helen, pack a suitcase for me. I'm going on a business trip tonight, for a week, for work. I'll probably be back on Sunday evening or even at night. Don't bite my head off. I didn't expect it myself, but business is business. It can't be helped. Well, I've got to run. I've got work to do. I'll be late." James left, and Helen sat there as if she were nailed to a chair. Tears were dripping from her eyes, and she couldn't stop them. She was so disgusted and offended. So the surprise was not for her. And her husband and his mistress went to the resort. And she dreamed like a fool. Swimsuit was going to buy. Her head was spinning with black thoughts. What a bastard. What to do? Make a scandal of it in the evening? What good would that do? He would go anyway, if he wanted to. Pretend I know nothing about it, but it's so humiliating. So that's why we have no intimacy now. We even sleep in separate rooms. So I'm here all day long washing, cleaning, and cooking. And hubby at the same time driving the other on resorts. Very well arranged, the bastard. I will not tell him anything. Let him go. We'll see who's who. Helen packed her husband's suitcase. He drove away, kissing her on the cheek goodbye, as if nothing had happened. And she began to sob out loud. She felt so bad that she could howl. In order not to go crazy, the woman decided to go out into the street, to get some air, and so to walk at the same time and run into the store. After buying the first thing she saw, bread and milk, Helen wandered home through the park. Tears welled up again and she wiped them away. The woman kept thinking, how can I live with him after this? How to look into his eyes? It turns out they have no family anymore. It's all a sham, a bubble. She's just convenient for James, that's all, and love is long gone. Suddenly a pack of stray dogs came flying out of the alley, surrounded her, barking in unison, and wanting to bite her. Helen was frightened out of her wits and started screaming. She had been terrified of dogs since she was a child, and her fear literally shackled her. Not far away, a homeless man was sitting on a bench with his belongings. His bag contained the empty cans and bottles he had found during the day at the dump. When he saw what was happening, he did not hesitate to rush to the aid of the poor stranger. He started waving the bags and scaring the dogs away, but they turned on him and ripped his pant leg and slightly scratched his hands. Then the vagabond dodged out, grabbed a huge rock, and threw it at the most aggressive dog. It whimpered and ran away, limping. The others also began to run after the leader. Helen exhaled and ran up to her savior. "Thank you. God bless you. If it weren't for you, I would have been torn apart by those vicious dogs for sure. They didn't hurt you much, did they? Let me see. My name is Helen." The bum only had time to say, "Never mind, it'll pass. It's nothing and I'm Max." And then he fell to the ground unconscious. Helen rushed to him, started shaking him and rubbing his cheeks. She was pounding as if in a fever. "What is it? It's an attack. One or the other. Why did I ever come out of the house? Come on, wake up. Come to your senses. The tramp slowly woke up and muttered, "Oh, I feel dizzy. It must be the hunger. I haven't eaten anything in 2 days. Sorry, I frightened you." Helen suddenly felt so sorry for that wretched man. He rescued her, and he collapsed without strength. And the wound should be treated to prevent infection. And she said firmly, "Max, get up. What's your middle name? You look old enough to be my father. Let's go back to my place. Eat and rest. Why are you sitting on the bench? It's cold." The man was dumbfounded. "Max me. But no, it's uncomfortable. You probably have a family, a husband, children, and here I am, as if out of the blue. I don't think your family will be happy." Helen waved her hands. "I don't have children, and my husband went to a resort with his mistress. So you're not bothering anyone. Come on, let's go, Max." They arrived at Olga's house. It was warm and cozy. The woman quickly set the table and invited her guest for dinner. Max began to nibble on the pancakes, all the while praising the hostess for such a treat. The man looked about 50 and a half, and he did not look like a drunken bum, though his clothes were worn and smelled bad. But his face, it was not smoky and swollen from alcohol. On the contrary, the image loomed up rather intelligent. Helen stared at her guest for a long time, then asked thoughtfully, "How did you end up on the street? You don't look like a vagrant at all. What happened?" The man lowered his eyes and only waved his hand. "It's a long story. I don't want to talk about it." "All right, I've sat too long. It's time to know the honor." "Thank you, Helen, for the bread. For the salt, you are a kind man. I will go." The landlady looked out the window, the rain pounding on the windows, the wind howling. She suggested, "Where will you go in this rain? You'll get wet. You'll get sick. You know what? I'm not letting you go anywhere. Here's a towel and my husband's tracksuit. Go to the bathroom. And I'll make a bed for you in the living room on the sofa. I'll wash your clothes too. They'll be dry by morning. You can spend the night and go tomorrow. And we'll have to treat your wounds. I'll get some peroxide and absorbent cotton." The vagabond asked in surprise, "Are you not afraid? What if I'm a murderer or some kind of maniac? And you let a stranger in just like that?" The girl just waved her hand. "I'm in such a state right now that I don't want to live. So do what you want. I don't care anymore." She turned around and went to her bedroom. Max didn't have to be persuaded. He didn't want to leave this cozy and hospitable house and go wandering again. The bum happily went to wash and then instantly fell asleep sweetly on the soft couch under the fluffy blanket. And at least Helen stopped suffering for a while, forgetting for a while about her rascal husband. She herself did not understand why she let a strange man into her house, and even a tramp. He could steal or do anything else, knowing that the woman was alone in the house. But for some reason, Helen had no fear at all. On the contrary, she felt at ease that she was not alone in a large mansion. Max was very accommodating. It was felt that he was not a hardened outlaw from the high road, but just a wayfarer confused in life. The next day, the doorbell started ringing in the morning. Sleepy Helen went to open the door. Her mother stood on the doorstep with her bags. "Hey, daughter, are you still asleep? We were supposed to go to the market, remember? Are you okay? You don't look well. Where's Sergey? It's his day off." Suddenly, the older woman saw Max come out of the living room and stare at her in a daze. She was just speechless, and she almost screamed. "Helen, what is this man doing here? Explain something." Betty looked at Max as if she'd seen a living ghost, and Max went pale, as if he were dumbfounded. Helen didn't understand either, so she tried to explain as best she could. "You see, Mother, I was so upset yesterday. It turns out James was cheating on me and went to a resort with his mistress. But we'll talk about that later. Anyway, I was walking home from market through the park, and a pack of dogs attacked me, and Max fought them off. He's a vagrant, and he was sleeping on a bench. So I took pity on him and invited him home to eat and spend the night in the warmth. That's the whole story. Don't shout like that, I beg you. I know what I did was rash, but it's okay, so don't worry about it." Mom was just about to say something important in response when several limousines pulled up in the yard and started honking. Expensively dressed, presentable men got out and came to the door. Helen was shocked. Who were they? And what were these people doing here? Could it be that some companions had come to see James? The businessman went into the living room, said hello, and clapped Max on the back in a friendly manner. "Well done, you devil. You won the bet." "Fair enough. The proof is on the video, because we've been watching you. We owe you $1 million, just like we agreed. Will you come with us?" Max waved his hands. "No, I'll come back later. I'm in the middle of an important conversation. The fate is being decided. I'll talk to you later. Just leave my things and my wallet. I can't take the bus home." Helen collapsed in her chair as if knocked down, fidgeting with her robe belt and looking around perplexedly. "Somebody explain something to me at the end of the day? Because so far it's like a madhouse. Who are these people? And who are you, Max? You're not a tramp, are you? And how do you know my mother? I can see it in your eyes that you obviously know each other." While Max was gathering his thoughts, Betty jumped up to him. "Why are you so quiet? Come on, tell your daughter who you are. He's your father, Helen. And my ex-husband. He's a big bastard. He left me without even blinking an eye when I was young. He threw me out like an old, unwanted shoe. I'd kill you. How's my daughter?" "It can't be," said the tramp in surprise. My daughter clutched her head. "Are you all crazy here?" "What father?" "Mom, are you delusional? You always told me there was a father, but he sailed away. He's been gone for a long time. I thought Dad was dead, but you just don't want to upset me." The elderly woman just waved her hand and suddenly began to cry. "What was I supposed to tell you? That your daddy never missed a skirt or gambled at the casino. And then he kicked me out with a fucking broom. Come on, Max, don't say nothing. Tell your daughter everything, now that we've met. She's been bugging me all my childhood. Where's my daddy? Why isn't he with us?" Max sighed heavily and began his long story. "Oh, daughter, it's a long story, but I'll begin. I came from a rich family, grew up in luxury and wealth. I had everything my heart desired. I was never punished as a child, only indulged in my whims. So I was spoiled. I grew up to be a complete brat. I didn't want to study. I only went out with my friends and spent my parents' money at the casino. Although I graduated from a prestigious university. How much stress I caused my parents, it was horrible. And then my mother died. This grief nailed me and forced me to settle down for a while and get smart. My father insisted that I get married. It was just then that your mother came to work at the mansion as a cleaner or maid, as the fashionable way of putting it. How beautiful she was. She had the figure of a model, a braid down to her shoulder blades, and eyes you could drown in. So I had a crush on her. I wooed her both ways, but Betty was a rock. No way, that's all. She told me more than once, "You won't marry me anyway, you'll woo me and leave me. And then I have to suffer." So one night at dinner, as a joke, I said, "I'm going to marry Betty. I love her, period. And if I didn't marry her, I didn't marry anybody." Of course, everyone was shocked. My father knew my feisty nature, and though he was not thrilled about my daughter-in-law, he agreed, hoping that I would settle down and stop leading a dissolute life. Betty was over the moon that we really loved each other. She turned out to be a great wife and hostess. I was always expecting a hot meal and a clean house, and I was a fool not to appreciate it all. At first, I carried Betty in his arms, showered with gifts, and then cooled down, bored with everything, and again I wanted freedom. I was beckoned by the lights of nightclubs and parties, and I began to walk, drink, and come back in the morning. Betty cried she forgave me because she loved me a fool. She asked me to get wise. And all I did was talk my way out of it. And then one day I got so mad I just blurted it out. "Who are you to tell me how to live my life? You miserable scavenger. If you don't like it, go away. Everything here was bought with my money, and you're nobody." I was drunk at the time, I fell asleep, and I forgot all about those words. And when I woke up in the morning, the house was silent. No wife, no belongings, just a note. "It's better to be a clean-cut mop than a scumbag like you." That was it. At first I was even happy. That was it. I was free. Do whatever you want. Walk around as much as you like, and no one would itch under my ear. So he went off on his own. My father couldn't bear to look at all that. He fell ill and soon died too. Only then, after he died, did it dawn on me what I had done. I had to pull myself together to save the family business, because it is the brainchild of my father, and I could not lose it for his foolishness. A lot of time it took until I began to manage properly, and I did a lot of mistakes. I was still spitting women, but they did not please me at all. I guess I wanted to find someone like Betty in each one, and I didn't. The years had taken their toll. I'd given up drinking long ago. My health was not good enough. A week ago, I had an argument with some friends. That's what Will told me. "You fool, Max, you've been going crazy all your life. It's like you're walking on the edge all the time. You'd be better off using your money for a good cause. Do you know how many people are starving and wandering? If you lived for a week as a bum, you'd understand a lot. But you can't stand it. You're not used to much hardship." So I bet that I could hold out and win the bet. There was $1 million on the line. We struck a deal and the show began. I dressed up like a hobo and went out on the street. At first I was terribly interested. It felt like some kind of game. There was a sense of lightness and freedom. But soon it got dark and I needed a place to stay for the night. I tried to go into the staircase and some granny chased me away, almost kicking me with a trash bucket. She shouted at the whole staircase like a lunatic. "Get out of here, junkie. There's a lot of crooks around here. I'll call the police in a jiffy." I went to the train station, but no way, all the seats there are already divided among the homeless. And the police are chasing me. So I stayed in the park for the night. It turns out that it's so scary to sleep on a hard bench, freeze, and understand that you have nothing. Nothing at all. I had no money for a cheap bed and breakfast. After a couple of days of starvation, I was forced to join the vagrants and look for empty bottles in garbage dumps. How humiliating that was. My stomach was cramping with hunger, and these vagrants, who didn't know me at all, didn't turn me away, but instead stole the leftovers from me after the summer cafe customers left. They could have eaten it themselves. They were also starving, but they carried it to me with the words, "Never mind, you'll soon get used to it." We were all ashamed at first, and then we broke down. I used to think that homeless people were ballast, worthless people who were to blame for everything, who drank their own lives away. And only by being in their shoes did I change my mind at once. One woman, Molly, had her house burned down. The wiring was short-circuited. So she's wandering around. What's she guilty of? Bob, who sometimes fed me, in general is a former engineer and had a family and a job. And in 1993, all collapsed, and he could not make a living like everyone else. His wife left, and so all went downhill. What about me? Am I any better? I'm the one who skipped half my life. If it were not for my rich and patient father, who had dragged me out of all my debts and troubles, I would have been a bum too. I learned more in this week than I did in a lifetime, my dears, and I won't be the same. I have learned to appreciate the crust of bread and to respect people, and I will no longer waste money, but I will help these poor people. That's the way it is. Betty stared at Max in shock. I can't believe my ears. Has anything really come to you in your old age? I don't recognize you. Max lowered his head. You'll have to forgive me, Betty, if you can. I was the last of the bastards when I was young. I hurt you. I didn't appreciate the warmth of home. But I didn't know you were pregnant, did I? Why didn't you tell me about it? After all, I could have raised my daughter, helped you. The woman just waved her hand. I was very offended. You didn't give me any credit. You called me a scavenger. And I found out about the pregnancy after the breakup. So I decided, why did my daughter need such a father? A philanderer and womanizer who doesn't respect her mother. I pulled Helen myself, even though it was hard. She's grown so beautiful, you'll just love her. But she repeats my fate, like a copy. She's also got a philanderer. Her daughter loves him and pleases him, but he doesn't like it. My heart bleeds to see my little girl suffer. Helen couldn't get a word out at all. She was in shock. She asked, "Parents, come on." Mom was offended, Dad was out, and so I would never know anything about the existence of my own father in nature. How could it be? It even hurt. No, I do not blame my mother. I am in the same situation now. My husband turned out to be a bastard and womanizer. I understand how my mother felt at that moment. But you, Dad, don't you ever want to know how your ex-wife lives? I don't understand. It's not even human. Max asked quietly. I'm guilty before you, and there's nothing to hide. I was only thinking of my own amusement. I have driven my parents to their graves with my antics. I have lost Betty. I have not known you, Helen. I pray you for one thing, dear ones, don't push me away now. I'm so happy to have found you. Though by chance, though. But we have met. I want to try to build relationships, to communicate, to live together. I still have the same huge country house, but it's so empty and lonely. Please, let's go to my place. Helen, daughter, you're the one who says your husband is a bastard, so move in with me. Or will you continue to suffer, knowing that he's out on the side? You're my family, and I won't let you go anywhere else. Now I have someone to live for, to wake up every morning, and that's worth a lot. Betty hesitated for a long time, and Max had to work hard to get her to believe him again. He was literally winning the woman over again. The woman feared that Max only sings beautifully, but he will snap again, and it will start all over again as in her youth. Yes, and the appearance of his Betty was very shy now. For a long time was not the former beauty. Hard and hellish work put its stamp, bags under the eyes, wrinkles, and the figure has long swollen. After all, Betty long ago spit on himself and put a cross on his personal life. So why does Max need her now? If with him, in spite of his age, any beautiful woman can easily spin. But Helen decided to move in with her father right away. She couldn't bear the idea of her husband coming back in a few days, tanned and groomed, and lying about difficult negotiations and referring to fatigue. It was so ugly and disgusting. So she packed up all her things that same day and went to live with her father. There was no stiffness or shyness between them. They somehow got along at once. Helen was happy to feed her father delicious dinners, and he would gobble them up and gaze at the girl with a doting look. She looks just like her mother, just like her, and smart and a hostess. Your husband's a fool, just like me when I was young. He lost such a woman. Can't you make up with her? In life, anything can happen. Maybe your dog will settle down too. Helen shook her head. I won't be able to trust him anymore, Dad. Do you understand? Even if he calls me back, I won't go. It took you so many years to realize that there was no better mother. Listen, Helen, I've been thinking. It's not right for you, a young girl, to sit at home. What would you like to do? What do you like to do? And I'll help you realize your desires. Don't be shy. Tell me directly. I have enough money. The girl wondered. You know, I'd like to open a private home for the elderly and a volunteer station to help vagrants from the street. At least a couple of times a week to bring them hot lunches and medicine, warm clothes, because that would also be important help. I always feel sorry for the elderly and destitute. Many old people turn out to be unwanted even by their own children. So I want to give them shelter and warmth of the soul. I would do it with pleasure, to be honest, and you will help me to manage in the beginning. Max smiled. Well, we've decided where we're going to spend the $1 million we've won, for a good cause. So go ahead, daughter, go for it. At least you'll take your mind off your sad thoughts. I'm always here for you. I'll help you, I'll support you, and I won't let anyone else hurt you. James drove home happy as an elephant. His mistress Cindy had sucked him dry for the week, a temptress, and the sea, sun, and wine contributed to complete relaxation. But it embarrassed him a little that Helen had not called him once all week. She did not even ask him how he was. Didn't whine that she missed him, didn't ask him to come back early. It was somehow unusual, and even offensive. The man was used to pushing his wife around, to lying to her, and to knowing that she faithfully waited for him and loved him very much. He had already imagined how his wife was waiting for him. For sure she cooked a delicious dinner, will look into her eyes like a faithful dog and tell her how she missed him. He's so sick of Helen. He didn't miss her at all. But a well-organized life and a perfectly clean house suited him, as well as his position in society. The man habitually entered the house, threw his jacket carelessly, threw his suitcase. What's the point of steaming? His wife will take everything apart and wash it, and shouted like a housewife. Helen, Helen, where are you? Why aren't you meeting your husband? Is the food ready? I'm so hungry right now. But the mansion was quiet and empty. No one answered James. He was taken aback. Never before had his wife not waited for him or met him. This was unheard of. She was spoiled. He went into the kitchen, where he didn't even smell anything edible. Then he went through the rooms, and just then he noticed that Helen's closet was completely empty. He rushed to the closet in the hallway. Same story. No coats, no shoes, nothing. The furious husband began to call her on her cell phone. Helen picked up the phone the first time. James shouted, "I don't understand, where are you? Why aren't you at home? What kind of tricks are these?" The husband comes home from a business trip tired and hungry, but his wife is gone. "Where are you? Why aren't you home?" "I was expecting a nice dinner." Helen answered quietly but firmly. "And I was counting on a week's vacation at the seaside with my beloved husband." "But you didn't take me there. You took your mistress." "That's how it happens, right? And you had the nerve to lie to my face about a business trip." "I know everything, James. I figured it out a long time ago." "So we're getting a divorce. Now you're going to yell at your chicken and push her around. And don't you ever raise your voice to me again. Do you understand? You have no conscience at all." The man was taken aback and went on the offensive. "Come home at once. What divorce? This wasn't part of my plan at all. It's no big deal. Helen, let's talk like adults. We're family. You want me to buy you a trip too." Helen suddenly laughed. "What was your plan? To keep screwing with my head, not counting me as a person, and having fun on the side. That's quite a family, isn't it?" "Oh, no, James. That's not how it works. I've told you everything, and I'm not going back. I'll file for divorce myself. Goodbye, and I hope you'll be happy with your new girlfriend." Helen hung up the phone, threw it so that it almost broke into pieces, and wept, long and sobbing, realizing that from that moment on she no longer had a husband. She was alone now. Max quietly came up behind her, stroked her daughter timidly on the shoulders, and began to comfort her. "Husband called. He's back, the bastard." Helen sobbed. "Bastard, bastard. He also resented me for filing for divorce. Turns out it wasn't part of his plan. And horns to me and hurt me, it's normal. He was happy with everything. I loved him so much, Daddy. You can't imagine. I wanted a child from him, but he said it was too soon. Now I'm alone." Max reassured Helen. "Daughter, sweetheart, honey, spit on him. Don't tear your heart out. You are not alone. You have me and your mother. We're family. We are here for you. We will always help and support you. Time heals, and you are sure to meet a good, decent man, and you will have children." Helen hugged her father, hugging him trustingly. "What a good thing we're here now, Daddy. Now we've talked, and it's easier. You're right, I just need a distraction. I'll start a boarding house, a volunteer center, and I'll think less about James." Max timidly said, "Helen, daughter, talk to your mother some more. I've really changed. Let her move in. I've been going at it this way and that way, but she's always had a temper. I still love Betty, and I don't want nobody else." At first, James was terribly indignant and angry. Who was she to talk to him like that? The daughter of a cleaning woman. What's the big deal? A man on the loose. I'm even better off. Cindy will only be happy. I'll marry her, and that'll be the end of it. She'll be the only one who'll be bitter about it. But it turned out very differently. Cindy was not at all happy about the news. She was quite happy with the role of mistress, fun and easy. After living with James for a couple of weeks, she vanished into thin air, realizing what a nasty character he had. Standing all day long at the stove and scrubbing the floor, Cindy certainly was not going to. Not only that, she shouted goodbye to him. "You're an idiot and an autocrat. I even feel sorry for your wife. She suffered with you, poor thing. I'm not your servant, and I won't let you boss me around. I'll find myself a new rich daddy in no time." So James was left alone, broke. And when he found out that Helen was now a rich heiress and lived with her father, a millionaire, he lost his nerve. He tried several times to call his ex-wife, waiting for her at work, near the boarding house. When he saw her, he did not recognize her. There was no longer that modest and quiet Helen, like a delicate flower. Towards him was a confident, stylish woman with a fashionable short haircut and bright manicure. She looked stunning, and James's stomach jerked as it had before. Fresh, rested, and so happy. Without him, the man began to call out to her, "Helen, Helen, wait a minute. You look so handsome. You look great. Look, can't we talk about this? I still love you, and I want you back." Helen smiled indulgently. "Thanks for the compliment. You don't look so good, to be honest. Are you back? What for? To please you, to cook your cabbage soup and rub your shoes? You didn't appreciate anything I did for you, and then you went out on the side. There is no more family, James, and there never will be. Alas." The man began to persuade. "Well, I've made my conclusions. Can't I try again? What if it works? Forgive me, Helen. I was a fool." The woman shook her head. "You can fix a broken cup, of course, but you can't drink out of it, it leaks. I won't be able to trust you anymore, you know." "What kind of family is that? Goodbye, James. Don't follow me. I'm not coming back." James became so bitter and hurt. His wife had left him, such a shame. The business was bursting at the seams. The competitors were attacking like piranhas. Everything was falling apart before my eyes like a house of cards. Friends openly condemned James because everyone knew Helen as an excellent wife and hostess. And about the affairs of the businessmen, not only lazy judged, many said to his eyes, "You've lost such a woman. You traded her in for a one-time wench. A woman like Helen should have been safe. She's everything to you, and you." James began to drink more and more often. The cognac stifled and dissolved the anguish of conscience. He forgot himself for a while in the arms of a call girl. But when he found her in his bed the next morning, he kicked her out immediately, screaming. Only now did he realize that a strong family and a faithful, loving wife is a man's strong rear. Too bad it was too late. Cindy quickly forgot James, and within a month she was off to Spain with her elderly and wealthy lover. Helen went into the business she loved and was happy, and only the absentee businessman was out of the picture. Now he wandered in the evenings with a bottle in his hands and howled from loneliness. Max and Betty, on the other hand, felt as if they were in their second youth. The man showed her a different, fabulous, and beautifully affluent life that she had never known. After the hard work of beauticians, massage therapists, and dentists, the older woman was simply unrecognizable. The stupid burned-out chemistry that so disfigures and ages our women of age was replaced by a fashionable haircut with a slanted parting, and inarticulate striped hoodies by fitted pantsuits and stylish dresses. Betty looked astonished at herself in the mirror and didn't recognize herself. There was no more tortured and tired scavenger. There is a lady, just like her rich businessman husband. Max took Betty to exhibitions and museums, told her about the history of the city, and she, like a sponge, absorbed everything. It was so interesting. A year later, Helen, too, finally found her happiness. An old dandelion lady accidentally came to her boarding house. She had lost her memory and wandered around the city, not knowing at all who she was or where she was from. So the kind-hearted citizens brought her to the boarding house. Although it was private, Helen took her grandmother into her care and took pity on her. One day our heroine walked around the wards, checking if everything was all right, and saw the same grandmother, they called her Maria, took a handkerchief out of her pocket, unwrapped it, and there was an old photo, a young boy. She kept looking at it and smiling. Helen quietly approached the old lady and asked, "Who is that, Maria? Maybe a relative of yours?" She only sighed and replied, "Maybe I don't remember, but I feel in my heart that he's no stranger to me." And then Helen photographed the picture and posted it on all social networks with the words, "Found an elderly woman, no memory, is in a boarding house, do good. She does not part with this photo. Maybe someone is looking for a grandmother? Come forward." The very next day, a panting man burst into Helen's office. "Hello, I saw your post. Does your grandmother have no memory? Where is she? I think it's my mom. You see, after my father died, she had memory lapses, Doctors say it was dementia. Her nurse was looking after her. Yeah, she wasn't looking after her. Can I see her? Please. A dazed Helen led her guest into Maria's room. The man ran up to her, fell to his knees, and began to kiss her hands. Mommy, Mommy, my darling. I found her. Thank God. I've been all over town. Last night I took a report to the police. Why are you looking at me like you don't know at all? Bring out your photo. That's me there, only in my youth. Your son, Mike. You have a grandson too, Chuck. Come on, remember? But the old woman only smiled blissfully. No, you're not Mike. You don't look like him at all. You're Bob. I'm Maria. The man only shook his hands. You're not Maria, you're Clara. And Maria is your sister, and Bob is her husband. You're all mixed up. Oh, Mommy, what am I going to do with you? You've been driven crazy by illness. Then Mike turned to Helen. She has dementia, so she gets confused and lives in her own world. She needs another course of treatment, then she gets better. She remembers everything. I'll take my mother home if you don't mind. I have to find a new nurse right away. Thank you for taking Mommy in. I almost lost my mind. She gave birth to me late. That's why she looks like that. Helen suggested, Of course, Mike, I'm glad your mother is found. But until you find a nurse, you can leave your mother here. The care and supervision here is excellent. I make sure of that. We have free visits. Come at any time. We can arrange for her to be examined by a doctor. We have nurses. She will be treated. And when she gets better, you can take her away. Mike got very excited. Helen, I don't know how to thank you. I'm at work all the time. I have my own pharmacy. I work all day long. And my mom in her condition needs round-the-clock care. She can't be left alone for a minute. That's why the nurses can't stand it. So she is quiet, all sits socks knitting, but when exacerbation, then goes to live for Bob, and where she does not know. I will pay for all and care and accommodation, just to be calm that she is all right. May I ask you an indiscreet question? Are you married? I don't think I have a ring on my finger. Helen was embarrassed. The question is really unusual. No, I've been divorced for a year. Are you married? Mike responded. I'm a widower. My wife passed away a year ago. She was sick for a long time. I'm raising my son alone, Chuck. He's 7 years old. Helen, may I invite you to your birthday party? I understand, unexpected, and we almost do not know each other. I like you very much, and I would like to get to know you better. My son and I will be very happy to meet you. Helen was embarrassed. Okay, I'll be there. Tell me the address. It's been a long time since I've been in pleasant company. Helen had not been going out for a year now. She had gone to work. And after her divorce from Sergei, she had no interest in amorous affairs. But Mike was very sympathetic to her. He was so worried about her mother. He raised his son himself, and he was a very prominent man in appearance. She puzzled over what to present, for they hardly knew each other, and she knew nothing of his tastes and habits, and decided to buy an expensive tie to her own taste. She did not forget about the child either and bought him a robot. She was all worried, thinking there would be a lot of guests, and she didn't know anyone. But when she rang the doorbell, a cute blue-eyed, plump little boy opened it for her. He extended his hand and said hello in a mature way. I'm Chuck, and you must be Aunt Helen. Are you the one who found my grandmother? My daddy told me. Come on in, we're waiting for you. Helen laughed. Well, hello, I'm Helen. Here, this is for you. And she handed the boy a gift. He glowed and was surprised. Oh, cool, thank you. It's just my dad's birthday. Helen had a lot of fun. It had been a long time since she had been with children. I know I got your dad a special present. Here, see if you think he'll like it. The impatient kid gave a thumbs up and immediately ran up to Mike, who had just come out of the bedroom. Chuck commanded, Dad, take off your stupid bow tie. Aunt Helen got you a cool tie. I like it. Mike and Helen collapsed laughing, Helen helping him put on his tie. When their hands touched, it was as if there was an electric shock between them. The attraction was insane. The tie really matched his shirt and the color of his eyes, and Helen was pleased that it came in handy. No one was in the apartment except Mike and her son, and the three of them sat down at the table. Helen was a little shy at first, but the brisk and chatty Chuck immediately diffused the situation, and the festive dinner went great. It got dark outside, and Helen started to go home. "Oh, I've been sitting up too long. I better go. Thank you for a wonderful evening. It was wonderful." Mike responded, "Thank you, Helen. I'll call a cab and walk you to the door. Chuck, you wait. I'll be right there." The boy said goodbye. "You come and see us more often. You're good. I haven't shown you my skateboard yet, have I?" Mike immediately picked up on the idea. "So next weekend, let's all go to the park together. Let's go out. Is that okay with you, Helen?" The woman rejoiced. "That's a deal. I'll be glad to. Bye, Chuck. See you Sunday." Mike walked Helen to the cab and gently touched her cheek. Millions of butterflies immediately fluttered in her stomach. He stared at her so intently, and then he said, "I feel so good with you, Helen. I thought that after Jean's death, I would never say these words to anyone else. But you turned everything inside me. I'll call you tomorrow." Helen nodded and got into a cab, waved and smiled dreamily the whole way. Mike had captured her soul, deeply, truly, and she looked forward to their next meeting. The couple began to date, and 6 months later they modestly got married. Helen finally found her quiet happiness. Chuck fell in love with her and called her mother himself, and she was melting from these words. In their new family, there were no lies, deceit, and betrayal. Mike was gentle, calm, and patient. He respected Helen and was very appreciative, and soon they began to dream of having a child together. Helen's parents fell in love and hit it off with their son-in-law, often barbecuing and relaxing together. James, on the other hand, had an unenviable fate. He couldn't hold on to his business, drank himself to death, and now spent all his days playing dominoes with his drinking buddies and drinking beer and dried vobola in the yard. One day, James was standing outside a liquor store in an old tracksuit, unshaven and very drunk. A family was walking by. A respectable man, a child of about 7, and a young pregnant woman. All were chatting cheerfully about something and holding hands. James looked at the woman with hazy eyes, and suddenly he realized, "That's my Helen." It was definitely her. Pregnancy had not spoiled her at all. On the contrary, her cheeks had turned pink, and freckles had covered her nose. Her fashionable haircut had grown, and now her soft strands were scattered over her shoulders in a beautiful waterfall. So that was it. Married again, happy, and carrying a child under her heart. And me. God, what do I look like? A drunken alcoholic. James was terribly embarrassed, and he hurried to get lost in the crowd so that Helen wouldn't notice him. And then James got drunk again and complained to his drinking buddies about his unjust fate, not realizing that he had ruined his own happiness, and no one was to blame.